The corridors of the Jedi Temple were silent in that early morning, but Anakin Skywalker walked with hurried steps, his face marked by exhaustion and fear. The nightmares had returned with overwhelming force, visions of Padme screaming in agony, of her hands reaching out for help that never came, of her life fading away while he watched helplessly. He could no longer ignore the signs, not after having lost his mother the same way, trapped in prophetic dreams that became cruel reality. This time would be different. He swore to himself as he headed to the diplomatic quarters where he knew he would find Senator Bail Organa. The decision was already made, and there was no more time for hesitation or to follow the Order's protocols. When the doors opened, Bail immediately noticed the urgency stamped on the young Jedi's face, rising from his work desk with visible concern. Anakin entered without ceremony, his voice laden with desperation as the words poured out in a torrent. He told Bail everything, about his secret marriage to Padme, about the pregnancy they kept hidden from everyone, about the nightmares that tormented him night after night showing her death during childbirth. The senator from Alderaan listened in silence, his face reflecting initial surprise that soon transformed into understanding and compassion. Bail had known Padme for years, considered her a great friend and ally, and the idea of losing her was unbearable for him as well. Anakin begged for his help, explaining that he needed to get her off Coruscant, take her to some safe and distant place where she could have the necessary care away from curious eyes and political intrigues. Bail didn't hesitate, placing his hand on the young Jedi's shoulder and assuring him that Alderaan would be the perfect refuge, where Padme would be protected and well cared for. The preparations were made in absolute secrecy during the following hours, with Bail arranging a discreet ship and accommodations in his home planet. Anakin returned to the quarters he secretly shared with Padme, finding her still asleep, the gentle curve of her belly visible beneath the sheets. He woke her gently, and when she saw the determination in his eyes, she knew something significant had changed. Anakin quickly explained his plan, talking about the nightmares, about Bail, about Alderaan. Padme initially protested, worried about the consequences of such hasty action, but the intensity of Anakin's fear convinced her that he wouldn't change his mind. She trusted him implicitly, and if he believed this was the only way to keep her safe, then she would follow his judgment. Together, they gathered only the essentials, calling C-3PO and R2-D2 to accompany them on this unexpected journey. The ship lifted off from Coruscant under the cover of darkness, with Anakin personally piloting while Padme rested in the rear quarters. R2-D2 emitted nervous beeps from his post in the back, his sensors detecting his master's tense emotional state. C-3PO, always prone to anxiety, moved restlessly through the ship's corridor, his metallic joints producing characteristic sounds. Anakin maintained his focus on the route established by Bail, a trajectory that would take them far from the main commercial routes and the watchful eyes he knew existed throughout the galaxy. He had not informed the Jedi Council about his movements, had left no message for Obi-Wan, simply disappeared into the night like a ghost. The guilt weighed heavily in his heart for this breach of trust, but it was nothing compared to the absolute terror of losing Padme as he had lost his mother. The ship landed smoothly on a private platform on the outskirts of the capital, where Bail already awaited them with a small group of trusted servants. Anakin helped Padme descend the ramp, keeping his protective arm around her as they were warmly received by the senator. C-3PO descended right behind, his photoreceptor eyes analyzing the environment with his characteristic exaggerated concern. He turned to R2-D2, who was beeping animatedly as he rolled down the ramp, and declared in his formal and anxious tone, "I have a bad feeling about this, R2." The small astromech droid responded with a series of optimistic beeps, as if trying to reassure his nervous protocol companion. Bail quickly led the group inside an isolated residence prepared especially to guarantee total privacy, assuring Anakin that Padme would receive the best medical care available in all of Alderaan, while the young Jedi observed the peaceful planet's horizon, allowing himself, for the first time in weeks, to believe that perhaps his nightmares wouldn't become reality. The days in Alderaan passed with a tranquility that Padme hadn't experienced in a long time, the pure mountain air and the planet's serenity offering a striking contrast to the political turmoil of Coruscant. Bail Organa meticulously kept his promise, ensuring she had access to the best doctors and that her needs were met with absolute discretion. Regularly, he sent coded messages to Anakin through secure channels, detailed reports about Padmé's health and the pregnancy's development. The senator's words brought comfort to the young Jedi's anguished heart. She is being closely monitored. All tests indicate that both she and the babies are perfectly healthy and safe. Padmé also sent her own messages, affectionate letters where she described Alderaan's stunning landscapes, how she spent her days reading in the residence's gardens, and how she anxiously awaited the secret visits that Anakin managed to make occasionally. These communications became the lifeline that kept Anakin connected to his distant family, allowing him to continue with his obligations as a Jedi while knowing that what he loved most was protected. In Coruscant, however, another pair of eyes had noticed a significant absence in the corridors of power. Chancellor Palpatine, with his sharp perception and his senses trained in the dark side of the Force, had detected the subtle but unmistakable change in Anakin Skywalker. Senator Amidala, a prominent figure in the Galactic Senate, had suddenly withdrawn from public life under the pretext of urgent matters in Naboo, but Palpatine was not so easily deceived. He watched Anakin with renewed interest, noting how the young Jedi seemed less tormented, as if a considerable weight had been removed from his shoulders. The nightmares that Palpatine had carefully cultivated through subtle whispers in the Force had apparently ceased, and this disturbed him deeply. During his private conversations with Anakin, the Chancellor began asking apparently casual questions about Padmé, inquiries about her well-being and whereabouts that initially seemed just political courtesy from a leader concerned about an important senator. Anakin, initially, responded to Palpatine's questions with vague and polite answers, mentioning that Padmé was well and taking care of matters on her home planet. But as days turned into weeks, the Chancellor's insistence began to arouse suspicions in the young Jedi. Palpatine repeatedly questioned about Padmé's exact location, when she would return, if Anakin maintained regular contact with her. The questions always came wrapped in paternal concern and genuine interest, but something in their frequency and intensity began to deeply bother Anakin. He found himself thinking about why the most powerful man in the galaxy showed so much interest in a specific senator, even though she was politically important. During his nightly meditations, when he managed to calm his turbulent mind, Anakin felt a subtle disturbance in the Force whenever he was in Palpatine's presence, something he had never noticed before or had always chosen to ignore. The seeds of doubt began to germinate in his consciousness, though he still hadn't fully understood their implications. Palpatine, in turn, perceived with growing frustration that his carefully constructed control over Anakin Skywalker was slipping through his fingers like sand. The young Jedi was more centered, more confident, less vulnerable to the emotional manipulations that had been so effective previously. The Sith Lord Darth Sidious recognized that he had lost his primary leverage over Anakin, the threat to Padmé's life that should have pushed him to despair and consequently to the dark side. Without Anakin completely under his control, without the power of the Chosen One at his side, executing Order 66 and the final blow against the Jedi would be significantly more risky. The Jedi were still numerous and powerful, and even with the programmed clones, Anakin's presence fighting alongside his masters could alter the outcome unpredictably. Palpatine spent long hours in his private office, meditating in the shadows, calculating his options, reformulating his plans meticulously elaborated over decades. He needed a new strategy, something that would definitively break Anakin's spirit and bring him irrevocably to darkness. The solution, when it finally crystallized in Palpatine's dark mind, was as cruel as it was effective. If he couldn't use the fear of Padmé's death to control Anakin, then he would simply make that fear a reality. The senator's death and her unborn child would completely destroy Anakin, plunging him into an abyss of pain and guilt from which Palpatine could easily mold him into his new apprentice. The Chancellor summoned an ultra-secret communication with General Grievous, the cyborg commander of the Separatist armies. Through encrypted channels that not even the Republic's best codebreakers could intercept, Palpatine transmitted his orders with lethal clarity. There is a mission of extreme importance that you must execute personally, General. Senator Padmé Amidala represents a significant threat to our plans and must be eliminated along with any descendant she may carry. Discover her location and complete this task with absolute discretion. Grievous, always eager for opportunities to cause suffering to his enemies, accepted the mission with sadistic satisfaction audible even through the holographic transmission. Palpatine knew that Padme's execution needed to appear as a legitimate separatist action, an attack that couldn't be traced back to him. He provided Grievous with additional resources, a small fleet of ships and a contingent of battle droids that could be sacrificed in the operation. The Chancellor also implemented his own network of spies to discreetly monitor Anakin's movements, knowing that eventually the young Jedi would lead him to Padme, even unintentionally. While weaving his web of betrayal and death, Palpatine maintained his public facade as a benevolent and concerned leader, continuing his regular meetings with the Jedi Council, feigning total cooperation in the search for peace. In his private chambers, however, he smiled with dark satisfaction, anticipating the moment when Anakin Skywalker, broken by loss and consumed by vengeance, would finally kneel before him and fully embrace the dark side of the Force, becoming the Darth Vader he was destined to be. The peace that Anakin had found in recent weeks shattered abruptly when the nightmares returned with renewed and terrifying violence. This time the visions were different, more specific and horribly vivid, showing not just Padme suffering, but a mechanical and sinister figure advancing on her with deadly spinning lightsabers. Anakin woke in cold sweat, immediately recognizing the distinct silhouette of General Grievous in his prophetic dreams, the separatist cyborg commander surrounding Padme with his battle droids while she screamed his name in despair. The visions repeated night after night, each time more intense, showing details that froze his blood. The residence in Alderaan, the peaceful gardens transformed into a battlefield, C-3PO trying uselessly to protect his mistress. Anakin could no longer ignore the signs, not after having learned in the most painful way that his Force dreams often predicted real events. Without informing the Council or waiting for approval, he requisitioned a ship and departed immediately for Alderaan, his heart pounding with absolute terror as the engines accelerated through hyperspace. What Anakin didn't know was that a microscopic tracker had been discreetly installed on his ship by Palpatine's agents, transmitting his exact location directly to the Chancellor. Palpatine received the tracking data with dark satisfaction, his lips curving into a cruel smile as he watched the coordinates appear on his private screen. Alderaan, he thought, an intelligent hiding place but now completely compromised. Immediately, the Chancellor transmitted the location to Grievous, accompanied by explicit orders to eliminate the Senator and cause maximum suffering to Skywalker. Grievous received the coordinates with malign enthusiasm, his metallic voice echoing through the transmission as he promised to fulfill the mission with pleasure. The cyborg general quickly assembled his forces, a frigate-class warship accompanied by transports loaded with battle droids, super droids, a force more than sufficient to subdue any defense he might encounter on the peaceful planet of Alderaan. As his fleet entered hyperspace, Grievous mentally sharpened his tactics, anticipating the pleasure of facing the legendary Anakin Skywalker in personal combat. Anakin arrived at Alderaan hours before Grievous, his ship descending rapidly on the private platform of the residence where Padme was sheltered. He ran inside, finding Padme and Bail, his urgency immediately alarming them as he explained the nightmares and visions of Grievous attacking. Padme tried to calm him, pointing out that she was perfectly safe, but Anakin couldn't calm himself, the Force whispering urgent warnings in his mind. The relative calm was brutally shattered when the alarms began to sound, detection systems registering the sudden arrival of multiple unidentified ships coming out of hyperspace directly over Alderaan. Anakin ran to the window, his heart sinking as he observed the unmistakable silhouette of a separatist frigate descending through the atmosphere. Grievous had arrived, exactly as his nightmares had predicted, transforming the peaceful planet into an imminent battlefield. Anakin grabbed his Jedi communicator, establishing an emergency connection with Obi-Wan Kenobi. "Master, it's Anakin. I'm on Alderaan and the Separatists are attacking with Grievous leading personally. Padme is here. She's in mortal danger. I need reinforcements immediately." The urgency in his voice was unmistakable, and Obi-Wan recognized the genuine desperation of his former Padawan. The Separatist ships descended over the region where the residence was located, their ramps opening to pour out hundreds of battle droids marching in precise military formation. Grievous personally led the invasion force, his cape dramatically billowing as he walked, his 4 arms already holding lightsabers stolen from fallen Jedi. C-3PO, observing the scene through the windows, entered absolute panic, his circuits practically overloading with terror. "We're doomed. Absolutely doomed. Battle droids everywhere. Oh, this is terrible." R2-D2 beeped frantically beside him, already connecting to the security systems trying to strengthen the barriers. Anakin activated his lightsaber, the brilliant blue blade casting light in the corridor as he positioned himself between the main entrance and where Padme was being taken to the innermost quarters. His heart pounded, not with fear for himself but with absolute terror for the woman he loved and the unborn children, as he heard the metallic sound of droids approaching inexorably. The droids exploded through the outer defenses with brutal efficiency, their blasters firing continuous bursts that destroyed anything in their path. Anakin retreated strategically, leading Padme deeper into the residence as he deflected shots with his saber, each movement calculated to protect her above all else. Grievous advanced methodically through the structure until he located his primary target in a large interior hall. The cyborg general stopped, his mechanical eyes glowing with malice as he activated all 4 sabers simultaneously. "Skywalker, what a pleasure to finally face you personally. And I see you brought company, the lovely senator I came specifically to eliminate." Anakin positioned himself firmly in front of Padme, his stance defensive but his eyes burning with fierce determination. "You'll have to defeat me first, Grievous." Combat exploded instantly, Grievous attacking with surprising speed, his 4 sabers creating a deadly whirlwind of blades that forced Anakin to retreat continuously to keep Padme out of reach. The duel was brutal and intense, Anakin channeling all his rage and fear into strength, his movements becoming faster as the battle progressed. He found an opening and struck with lethal precision, his saber cutting completely through one of the general's mechanical arms. Grievous roared in frustration, but immediately adapted his fighting style, and moments later another arm fell, reducing him to only 2 functional limbs. But it was then that the situation changed drastically when additional waves of droids invaded the hall through multiple entrances, super droids advancing relentlessly. Anakin was forced to retreat, his focus divided between continuing to face Grievous and defending Padme from the droids that began to surround her from another angle. The droids advanced dangerously close to Padme while Bail tried uselessly to stop them. Anakin completely abandoned his duel with Grievous, leaping across the hall to interpose himself between his wife and the mechanical attackers, beginning to destroy droids with devastating efficiency. Grievous, seeing his opportunity, began to advance from a different angle, skirting the perimeter to reach Padme. The general was only meters from her, his sabers raised for the final blow, when a familiar voice echoed through the chaos. "Hello there!" Obi-Wan Kenobi descended in a perfect acrobatic leap directly between Grievous and Padme, his blue saber already activated and blocking the general's attacks. Behind him, entering majestically through the main entrances, came Mace Windu with his distinctive purple saber and Master Yoda, whose small stature contrasted with the immense presence in the Force that he radiated. The arrival of the Jedi Masters completely changed the battle's dynamics, transforming a desperate situation into decisive advantage. Mace Windu moved like a storm through the droid ranks, his Vapad style channeling the combat's aggression into devastating power, each strike destroying multiple enemies simultaneously. Yoda leaped between groups of super droids with impossible agility, his green saber cutting through their reinforced armor, waves of Force energy sending entire droids flying. Anakin felt a wave of gratitude and relief seeing his masters arrive, allowing himself finally to breathe as he continued defending Padme with renewed confidence. Obi-Wan faced Grievous with the expertise of decades of experience, his defensive Sorisu style perfectly frustrating the general's aggressive attacks. "You really should have chosen a different target, General. Attacking Alderaan was a terrible strategic mistake." Grievous, now reduced to only 1 functional arm and 1 saber, realized the battle was lost. He attempted one last desperate charge against Obi-Wan, but the Jedi Master simply spun elegantly to the side, his saber cutting through Grievous' last arm. The general fell to his knees, his systems beginning to fail. It was then that Anakin approached, having ensured that Padme was safe. He looked at Grievous, remembering all the Jedi this monster had killed, how many lives he had destroyed. Anakin activated his saber again, bringing the brilliant blade close to the exposed respiratory systems in Grievous' chest. With deliberate and controlled movement, he directed the intense heat of the saber directly onto the respiratory apparatus, the components melting and the lungs failing instantly, definitively ending the threat of General Grievous as the cyborg's mechanical eyes permanently dimmed. The silence that followed the battle was heavy and charged with tension, interrupted only by the distant sounds of destroyed droids, still emitting occasional electrical sparks. Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Yoda remained in the devastated hall, their gazes moving slowly from fallen Grievous to Anakin, then to Padme, who was clearly pregnant, and finally to Bail Organa, who observed the scene with visible apprehension. The truth that Anakin had guarded so carefully was now completely exposed before the most powerful members of the Jedi Council. Yoda took a step forward, his small figure radiating an authority that transcended his physical size, his ancient eyes fixing on Anakin with a mixture of disappointment and understanding. "The Order's guidelines you violated, Anakin. Secret marriage, forbidden attachments, decisions made without consulting the Council. Grave, very grave this is." Anakin lowered his head, unable to deny the accusations, guilt weighing on his shoulders as he felt the weight of his master's judgment. Obi-Wan moved to stand beside Anakin, placing a comforting hand on his former Padawan's shoulder in an unequivocal gesture of support. He looked directly at Yoda and Mace, his voice calm but laden with conviction. "Master, with all due respect, let's wait for his child to be born, then we'll resolve this." Anakin acted to protect the woman he loves and his unborn child, and although he violated the Order's rules, he also just helped us defeat Grievous. Mace Windu frowned, clearly divided between his rigid commitment to the rules and the recognition that Anakin had acted with courage. Yoda observed the scene in silence for long moments, his eyes moving between Anakin, Padme, and Obi-Wan, calculating the consequences of any hasty decision. Wise, Obi-Wan's counsel is, a time for reflection necessary will be. After the child's birth, to the temple you will return, Anakin, and your future in the Order we will decide then. Anakin felt an overwhelming wave of gratitude toward Obi-Wan, understanding that his former master had risked his own position on the Council to give him this chance. The Jedi Masters departed from Alderaan soon after, leaving Anakin alone with Padme and his turbulent thoughts. As repair teams began their work on the damaged residence, Anakin found himself in one of the gardens least affected by the battle, his mind spinning incessantly through recent events. How exactly had Grievous discovered Padme's location in Alderaan? A secret that only a handful of people knew. He then remembered the conversations with Palpatine, the Chancellor's almost obsessive insistence on knowing about Padme, the repeated questions about her location. Only Palpatine knew that Anakin might eventually visit Padme. Only he had sufficient knowledge to track the young Jedi to Alderaan. The realization hit Anakin like a physical blow. Palpatine was the Sith Lord the Jedi had been searching for years. Was Darth Sidious orchestrating the entire war from the shadows? Everything made sense now. Palpatine's intimate knowledge of the Sith, his stories about Darth Plagueis the Wise, his insistence on keeping Anakin close and isolated from the Jedi Council. Anakin rose abruptly, his mind working frantically through the implications. He had been demoralized in the Council, his position questioned, but now he saw an opportunity for redemption, a chance to definitively prove his worth as a Jedi and as the Chosen One. If he could expose and defeat the Sith Lord, perhaps the Council could forgive him. Perhaps he could finally become the Jedi Master he had always aspired to be. Anakin explained his suspicions to Padme, seeing shock and disbelief transform into horrified acceptance. She begged him to wait, to call the Council to deal with Palpatine collectively, but Anakin was resolute, arguing that he needed to confirm his suspicions before making such grave accusations. He kissed Padme long, promising to return as soon as he finished what he needed to do. Bail provided discreet transport back to Coruscant, and hours later Anakin was walking through the Senate building's corridors, his heart pounding as he approached the Chancellor's office. It was late night, few senators or guards were present. He didn't ask for permission, simply used the Force to open the locked doors, entering the opulent chamber where Palpatine worked. Palpatine looked up, genuine surprise crossing his face seeing Anakin enter so abruptly. But Anakin wasn't willing to play diplomatic games, his hand already resting on his lightsaber. "I know who you really are, Palpatine. I know you're the Sith Lord, that you orchestrated this entire war, that you sent Grievous to kill Padme." The mask of surprise on Palpatine's face slowly transformed into a cold and cruel smile, his eyes gleaming with dark side power. "Ah, you've finally understood, young Skywalker. Yes, I am Darth Sidious, and you were so close to joining me, so close to embracing your true destiny." The combat that followed was brutal, Palpatine revealing abilities that transcended anything Anakin had imagined. Sith Force lightning illuminating the office as the two dueled among expensive furniture that was destroyed. Anakin fought with every ounce of skill he possessed, but Palpatine was a master with decades of experience. His attacks calculated to exploit every weakness. A blast of Sith lightning struck Anakin's mechanical arm, frying its circuits and leaving it hanging uselessly, forcing him to fight with only one functional arm. Palpatine pressed his advantage relentlessly, pushing Anakin back through the office until he was cornered against the panoramic windows. For a terrible moment, it seemed Anakin would be defeated, that the Sith Lord would triumph. But then Anakin remembered everything he was fighting for. Padme, his unborn child, the Jedi who trusted him, the Force's balance that was his destiny to restore. With a cry of pure determination, he channeled one last massive burst of Force energy, pushing Palpatine back and creating enough space for a final blow with his saber, the brilliant blue blade piercing through the Chancellor's chest and ending decades of Sith conspiracy. When the guards finally arrived, they found Anakin standing over Palpatine's body, exhausted but alive, and the truth quickly spread. The Supreme Chancellor was the Sith Lord, and the young Jedi had discovered the conspiracy and defeated the enemy in single combat. Anakin was hailed as a galactic hero, the Jedi who had ended the war by eliminating the true master behind the Separatists, the chosen one who had fulfilled his prophecy. The Jedi Council formally reconvened him, and in an extraordinary session, Mace Windu declared, "Your actions saved the Republic and the Jedi Order, Anakin Skywalker. Although you violated our rules, you also proved your worth in ways that few Jedi in our history have achieved. The Council has decided to completely absolve you and grant you the title of Jedi Master." Yoda nodded in agreement. "The chosen one you truly are, Master Skywalker. Balance to the Force you brought." Weeks later, in Alderaan, surrounded by Obi-Wan, Bail, and medical teams, Anakin held in his arms for the first time his twin children, Luke and Leia. While Padme rested recovering from a successful childbirth, alive and healthy thanks to Anakin's decision to protect her in Alderaan, fulfilling the promise he had made to never lose those he loved.